Warm welcome to everyone who could take out time today and come here. And I would like to thank Ajmera Xchange for organizing this beautiful panel discussion with such dignitaries. And I think one topic which is very close to my heart as to how can we use a product of a portfolio management service to build generational wealth. Now, before I begin, I think a very simple question to the audience would be, how many of you here are not invested in the markets? So I believe the large part of interest has been because most of us here are invested in the markets. And I think another question that I would like to ask is, how many of you here would have allocated a certain capital to a professional to manage their capital? So very, very few hands here. So while we would go to lengths to spend on a lot of activities, like say you would spend on an interior designer lakhs, maybe crores on your house, or maybe for a 5 minutes, the best physiotherapist in town, you'll spend 5 minutes and you'll pay 5,000. But sometimes to take care of your own wealth, I've seen a lot of resistance when it comes to paying a fees to a professional who can actually help you build generational wealth. And I'm sure over the past 5 years, markets have been in a great frenzy. This has been one of the most fiercest bull markets that we've seen in the last decade or so. And I think it is interesting to understand how we can use PMS as a tool to build generational wealth. So what we'd like to discuss today is, of course, a lot of elements of a portfolio management service, how they are different from a mutual fund and how we could use them over the next decade or 10 decades. Even, we talk about Amrit Kaal. I think this is a product, and we'll take examples from the US, which is, US and China are only two countries in point where we've seen a country go from a $4 trillion to a $10 trillion economy. So I think the first question to Amisha Ben is that, in 1985, US was at a similar point where India is today. And, the larger wealth managers there, the likes of Fidelity Capital, used to manage $25-30 billion at that point of time. Today, each one of them manages close to $3.5 to $4 trillion individually. So what happened there is, from 1985 to 2000, the AUM grew 10 times, and in the next decade, it grew 10 times more. So we've seen a lot of changes globally in terms of how money has been managed. So before we get into the nitty-gritties and details of a typical PMS product, the challenges and the benefits, I would like to understand from you is, how do you see this panning out in India, and how does a retail investor benefit from it?
So as what you very rightly said, that the assets under management grew 10x and then 10x again over 2 to 3 decades. And again, India is one of the highest saving economy. 29 to 30% of our earnings is in form of savings. But when it comes to putting that savings into physical assets like real estate or gold, to financial assets like FD, bonds or markets, the ratio is still hugely skewed in terms of physical assets. When we come to financial assets, ratio is again hugely skewed in terms of fixed income products compared to equities. So the power of compounding and the ability to grow beyond inflation. What is actually creating wealth? Your savings have to grow higher than inflation. Then only you can generate wealth. Otherwise, every year you lose purchasing power. So that transition is unleashed in India post-COVID. That more and more understanding because of social media, also the time that we as a nation invested because we had no other work to understand what the markets are, gave a trigger, a catalyst to shift from physical fixed income savings to gradually market linked savings. And that's why you see the SIPs rising phenomenally. So this trend is just begun. It's going to grow bigger and bigger. But at the same time, in last 30 years, what happened in US is all these Fidelities and others who are active managers who grew so hugely have become from 95% of market, the active managers, to just about 35% of market, which means another 60% of the money which is being managed is not in the form of active managers. It is by way of ETFs, which means follow the index, as beating the index itself is a tough task. And beyond that, in last 10 years, the biggest trend is do quant-based, which means remove the emotions, play by the rule, use the data, and generate superior alpha. So in last 10 to 15 years, almost 35% of the money is being managed in US by way of quant, 30-35 by way of passive, which is the index funds, and the active managers are 30 to 35%. And I think we will not take another 20 years to achieve these proportions. This will happen very rapidly over the next 1 to 1.5 decades.
Very interesting. When Amisha Ben spoke about this, how much saving basically goes into the financial asset. If Indians are saving close to $1 trillion, I think not even 5% are moving towards financial asset, and the gap is so huge today that I think we need a lot of education on how we can have a large piece of their investments as financial assets rather than real estate and gold, which it traditionally has been.